The mighty Dremel 3000. You know, I've always pondered what makes them so mighty. Is it the rapid 33,000 finger blasts a minute it delivers at top speed? Or is it the 130 wallops of power inside its minuscule but mighty midget motors? Maybe it's the lightweight and allegedly high quality components. Personally, and I'm speaking from experience here, I'd say that what makes Dremel so infamously legendary is that they never f***ing work. Hello you lovely b****s. In today's video, I'm not only going to show you how to safely tear down your broken rotary tool and figure out what all the components are, but also how to diagnose its illness and of course, attempt to fix it. Along the way, we'll accidentally learn a little bit about how electric motors work and more importantly, how not to solder. So strap yourself in, grab a beer and collapse on the sofa with your favourite sex robot while I strip this little spinning love wand down to its bearings, scrape off every last fleck of content rust that I can, and lob it into the trash can of the interwebs to be salvaged by the dumpster divers of YouTube. That's you, by the way. Now the symptom of the fault we're dealing with here is simple. When you hit the power switch, you get nothing. Nada. Fuck all. It's got about as much life as my last marriage. This fix will work on most of the Dremels that display the completely dead symptom. Well, I say fix. I use that word loosely. There's no doubt it'll die again after about 5 minutes of further usage. But if I can derust one more antique blowtorch and save myself 50 quid, it's got to be worth it, right? I mean, what's the worst that can happen? I'll fix it till it's more broken. Now, if you watch my other video, Dremel vs Draper, in the Rotary Tool Showdown of the Century, link in the description of course, you'll know two things. That they call it the Dremel 3000 because it'll break approximately 3,000 times a year, and that the frequency of its failures have forced me to bestow upon it the multi-tool moniker of the Faultmaster 3000. Which is a far more accurate title, and what I'll refer to it as from here on out. I think Dremel must know that their spinny little grief sticks break more often than Keir Starmer talks about his dad's career.
Dad was a toolmaker. He was skilled as a toolmaker. My dad was a toolmaker. Highly skilled.
Because they generously provide it with a 2-year warranty. I've already used this warranty to make a claim twice, and the Faultmaster broke for the third time about 10 seconds after the warranty ran out, which I'm sure would make the cunning executives over at Dremel HQ as happy as a lesbian sex party with a double-ended dildo.
It will save us so much time.
I love the colour.
So diverse.
Anyway, it's time to give this Faultmaster a new lease of life. So let's get into it. Firstly, instead of tearing it apart with your bone-crunching man hands, instead, try delicately removing the 4 starhead torque screws, quite obviously located on its underbelly, with your electrical or manual screw rotator. I'm using a T15 bit here. I'm not sure if it's right, but it seems to work. Then, remove the head of the phallus. The nose of the tool by unscrewing it from its threaded shaft. Then, with all the grace of a drunk chimpanzee, pop off its outer shell to reveal its electromechanical innards. Now, and this is quite important, stare at it for a while in dismay. Possibly let out a sigh, maybe scream, "Why do you do this to me?" Take a few minutes to study this rotating rebel and try to understand the wizardry of its components. Any real man, you know, one that likes to chew on screwdrivers or stroke hammers in his spare time, should always know not just how to use his tools, but also how they work. The latter could be a great help in fixing them when they inevitably give up the ghost and make for that final workshop in the sky. First point of call on the investigation operation is to check the brushes. Now these will only be worn down if the Faultmaster is well used, which it won't be, because I can pretty much guarantee it will meet an unceremonious death way before the brushes wear down. But for shits and chuckles, let's check them anyway. Now you don't actually have to dismantle the silvery piece of landfill fodder to examine the brushes. You can just use a flathead manual screw rotator to give these little slotted discs a twist. When they pop out, intentionally drop at least one of them on the floor and, as tradition demands, curse and gently whisper, "Fuck you, Dremel," before grabbing the spring-loaded carbon nib and yanking it out. If they're as low as your ex-wife's libido, maybe think about swapping them for some new ones. But these ones ain't worn down to sad little impotent nubs just yet, so we'll reuse them. For those of you still vaguely paying attention, the carbon brushes pass current through the commutator to the rotor windings, which is what makes the rotor turn. Now we'll get into that a little later on, but right now let's continue dismantling the silver sex toy. Remove the 2 screws holding the cable clamp in and gently lift her out of her silvery cocoon to reveal what treasures are lurking within. These 2 lovebirds are the rotor and the stator, and they're right in the middle of coitus by the looks of it, the bloody exhibitionists. Ah, the variable speed control and integrated on-off switch. This is obviously where the lightning juice gets injected, straight into a very dirty board. Looks like we've got a massive capacitor, couple of coils and a fun size resistor. Cleaning up the capacitor reveals its rating of 1 microfarad, 275 volts. Checking out the code, we can find that it's a metallized polypropylene film EMI suppression capacitor. F***ing hell, it doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, does it? What, did they run out of catchy names? It's supposed to reduce electromagnetic interference, but maybe they're using it with the inductance, coils and resistor to act as some sort of filter. Let's give them a roger in with some test probes. Okay, the capacitor ain't shorting, that's always a good sign. And there's continuity on the coils. And this resistor, well, let's just say that it's got resistance. Okay, so it looks like the power supply is okay. From there, the electricery goes to the speed control through these 2 pins. Probably a voltage based speed control, which is determined by the resistance on these tracks, I'm guessing. Ah, the rudimentary accuracy of analog inputs. Sometimes the simplest ideas work best. Although, this little cock-shaped bastard has broken on me so many times, I'm not sure I'd use the words works best to describe it. This is the rotor, and here are the field windings. Looks like the electricery is fed to the field windings through these pins. But which one? Let's give it a check. Turn your yellow wonder stick to the funny looking upside down horseshoe Greek symbol setting. Comment in the word box below if you know what it is. You know, to show everyone how smart you are, and so that I know someone actually bothered watching the video. You might even get a lovely from me. Right, so neutral to the top pin on this side, and carbon brush to the bottom. And then carbon brush to the top pin on this side, which must mean speed control goes to the bottom pin. Okay, I see. So the electricery comes from the speed control on the bottom pin at the far side, which feeds the bottom field winding and subsequently the near side carbon brush. It carries on through the rotor windings where the real spinny magic happens and exits through the carbon brush contact and the top pin on the far side. After feeding the top field windings, it scurries off through the neutral on the near side top pin. Bloody hell, if that wasn't complicated enough, hold on tight because we're about to get real technical. What we've got here is known as a series wound universal motor. Now a motor works by passing current through a coil in a magnetic field, but the clever thing with this motor is that it doesn't use permanent magnets. A magnetic field is created by sending current through the stator windings, the wondrous electromagnet. After going through the stator, or field windings as the pros call it, the buzz juice then goes through the rotor windings to make the motor spin. The universal bit in the title is because it can work on both AC and DC. That's absolute f***ing witchcraft if you ask me, although this Dremel is configured to work on 230 volt AC. Now, being the nosy prick that I am, the last time I made a warranty claim on this silver sad stick, I asked Dremel why the Faultmaster 3000 breaks more often than my ex-wife's marriage vows. Thomas Manger in the customer services department kindly responded and informed me that it's the field coil and stator. So let's continue our exploration of frustration there. Firstly, let's check continuity on the field windings. If those windings are broken, there's no magnetic field for the rotor coil to get all spinny in. Let's have a butcher's. Well, visually they look intact, but that means about as much as Keir Starmer pledging to cut down on immigration.
You're all welcome, just not in my house.
So get your electrician's magic wand out again and give your Faultmaster another little pokey across the field windings. Okay, this one's good, but well, first time lucky, who would have thunk it? This must be an inherent manufacturing or design defect. 3 Faultmasters, same issue. Either I've got the world's worst luck, or there's a fundamental design flaw here, and before anyone accuses me of tool abuse, I'll have you know that my ex-wife was rougher with me on our honeymoon than I ever was with this grey penis impersonator.
I'm not going to hit you with it, Fixin'. Now bend over and take it like a man.
Looks a bit loose on one of these contacts. Let's give it a nudge with a pair of tweezers and see if that's where the break is. Ah, the wire's not connected to this pin here. Whether it's burnt out or just snapped, only the repair gods know. But Dremel, do better for fuck's sake. Okay, so first thing to do is try to unwind the magnet wire by one turn and reconnect it to this little metal contact here. Sounds simple, it ain't. The end of the wire is usually tucked underneath the other turns on the winding, like an agoraphobic hermit crab. And since it's got even less girth than my tragically petite love button, it snaps if you so much as look at it funny. Now, if it does snap and it's too short to solder, you'll be up shit creek with only a snorkel and a pair of speedos. Nah, it's stuck firm. If I pull it any harder, I'm gonna break it.
That's what she said.
This wire is barely thicker than the hair on my ex-wife's unkempt lady garden, so I'm going to have to bust out the soldering sword of destiny and some ridiculously oversized magnet wire. I'm lucky if this works, because what I've got here is way too girthy.
That's what she said.
I've recently found out that the cross-sectional area of the Faultmaster 3000's field winding conductor is 30 AWG,
American wire gauge,
or approximately 0.05mm square for us normal people. This magnet wire is 0.5mm square. If your brains are big enough to do some extremely complicated maths, you'll know that's 10 times thicker than it should be. Well, you got to use what you got laying around, ain't ya? I do recommend getting the right size magnet wire though. Now, I'm not going to be able to hold the soldering iron, and the extra thick magnet wire all at once. So I'll pre-coat the fat wire with solder first, and try to jam it in there with a soldering iron against the field wire like some kind of electrical wire gangbang. Bloody hell, my hands are shaking worse than a crackhead at a rehab unit. So this is me swearing profusely like an abusive cupid encouraging the wires to pair up. After 3 or 4 attempts they eventually found love. Although if this solder joint is being compared to a marriage, I wouldn't be surprised if a divorce is on the cards. Now we want to remove the metal contact, throw the wire over its holder and jam it back in clamped onto the wire. Getting this little contact out is harder than it looks. So the pin out from the speed control goes in one side, and on the other side are these two jaws which bite the wire through the enamel insulation and complete the field winding part of the circuit. It will probably look like Wolverine chewed on it by the time it's out, so try to fix it up before getting it back in. I'm a little bit worried here, the jaws don't look big enough to wrap around a massive wire. Let's try to widen them a touch before we send it home. Pull the wire over the contact holder on the stator and push the clamp back in. Oh dear, it's sticking out like an awkward erection at a family dinner. Maybe if I try and widen the jaws it will hit home. So let's try and wedge it in there with a pair of side cutters. Nah, maybe needle nose pliers will work. Well, it's a bit squashed, but it'll do while we check for continuity on the windings. Nothing. Now I'll spare you the pain of enduring the ineptitude of the next 5 minutes and describe the debacle while I fast forward through it. So I tested from the solder joint to the other end of the field winding, and somehow there was no continuity, which seems f***ing mental. I mean, is there another break in the wire? Anyway, I desoldered the extended piece to check if there was continuity on the winding without going through the solder joint. And in my desperation, I tried to pull a bit more wire free to make it easier, which of course snapped the wire, leaving a tiny little wire stub poking out from behind the windings, mocking me like it's my ex-wife at our divorce settlement. There's no way I'm going to be able to solder anything onto that tiny stub. I'm going to call it, I'm afraid. Bodge failed. But wait, yeah, okay, while I failed to unwind the broken field winding, or solder an extension to complete the circuit, all is not lost. Of course, I'm not going to sit here putting 10,000 turns on a new field winding, but maybe I can replace the whole component and get a new stator. Looking on the interwebs, the best deal I found was from Spare Parts World. New field windings for just under 20 quid, including shipping. That's about 27 greenbacks for our Americano brothers across the pond. Let's open it up and see what we got. Almost identical. I'm pretty sure the new one, on the left, is a copy. The weld lines look much better on the original Faultmaster windings. But for 20 squids, they could have f***ing superglued it together for all I care. Guess I'll better check these field windings are actually working before I attempt to put this vibrating love stick back together. Nice. Let's see if I can remember this rightly. Shine your new field windings onto the speed control. Make sure the pins are sitting correctly. Now f*** the rotor into the field windings. No KY jelly or foreplay needed. Counterintuitively, put the rubber on after insertion. Now attach the power supply and pop it back into its silver shell with the rubber cord grip the right way round. Give it a little push to encourage it back into its housing and show it you mean business, and then throw your side flaps back in, ensuring the shell slips nicely into the grooves. Make sure the cable clamp is firmly holding the sheath of the cable, but not pinching the wires or insulation like a pervert pinching an arse on a train. Give the rotor a little twiddle with the same enthusiasm you flick your wife's bean after a hard day's work, and then slap the case back on with a satisfying click. Now you're hiding the Faultmaster's decency. To finish up, chuck the 4 Torx head screws back in, torqued up to the manufacturer's recommended setting of JBTT. Screw the foreskin back on and ram the spring-loaded carbon nubs straight into the Faultmaster's inviting fun holes. And you're ready to go. And now for the final test. Will the repair gods look favourably upon me with this one, or will they curse me for eternity with a massive bodge failed? Well, she seems to be running okay. No funny noises or dodgy smells, which reminds me I must clean out my sex robots. Testing on all speeds, and she seems to be purring smoother than a freshly shaved pussy.
Meow.
Well, what kind of pussy did you think I was talking about? The vibration level's somewhere between my ex-wife's remote control knickers and a 1980s Jeep, so I guess that's a pass. Lovely. Now I know I had to put my hand in my pocket to the tune of 20 quid for this bodge, but it's better than forking out 50 for a new Dremel, although link to one in the description if you want to do that instead. Or, if you fancy yourself as a bit of a repair god, there's also a link to the correct size magnet wire for your field windings, and all the other bits and bobs needed to do the job in the word box below too. Well, you lovely bastards, if you found that in the slightest bit entertaining, dismantle that like button, solder down a subscription button, share it with a man who chews hammers.
Like and subscribe.
And stay tuned for the next instalment of Fixing Rusty Stuff, Tools for Men.